So recently I was talking with a fan, surprised that such a thing exists. Hi guys, I'm surprised you exist. Thank you for existing. And of course, with that kind of attitude, I had to ask, what the heck is it you like about my crap? And he said that he liked that I went deeper into games with my reviews that just is it good, is it bad, to the point of bordering on, and this was a term I hadn't heard before, gaming academia. Which I get the concept that'd be something like extra credit, or the one he pointed me at was errant signal, which was actually pretty good. Do not ingest in large volumes, but very nice stuff. Or old school game over thinker, before he jumped the shark. That was a shark jump he got. So I was quite flattered. I generally speaking like those shows. I do appreciate the way they look deeper into games beyond that. But there's one thing that I find a little disconcerting, and I sometimes think that a lot of these gaming academia type discussions, and wow, now that I think of it, that sounds really pretentious, but a lot of these kinds of discussions, I feel, focus a little bit too much on the story and not enough on the gameplay, the actual core game of the whole thing, the game of the game. And this is something that's been bothering me, especially because this year, the major focus has really been on the storyline, on telling story through games and gameplay and stuff. And that's just not my kind of game. It's been kind of meh for me. Those aren't really the kind of games I like. And of course, I feel there's room for them. Like, one thing that I've actually heard discussed was, like, actually intentionally having bad controls in parts to help the player, like, feel what the character is feeling, like, where it makes sense. Like, if they're injured or scared, like, having the gun shake when they're scared and stuff. And I'm hesitant about that, but if your game is really more about the story than the gameplay, well, okay, I could actually see that being kind of cool. But I do worry that we're leaning a little too much in that direction. I'm very much someone who prefers the gameplay, and that's one of the weird things about games. See, we want games to be taken seriously as art, to be regarded the same way as film, but here's the other funny thing. At the same time, we want them to be taken seriously as a sport, like football. And what the fuck else could simultaneously be like a movie and like a sport at the same time? It's kind of mind-blowing. And if you think about it, games are incredibly varied, and they can swing both ways. That sounds a little weird here, but you get what I mean. But I very much prefer the games that lean more towards the football side than I do the ones that lean towards the movie side, personally. But I feel there's room for both. But I think we're focusing way too much on those kinds of games. A lot of my favorite games have little to no plot. Like my favorite game of last year, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. Possibly the greatest kart racer ever made. Or second greatest in my opinion. I really love Jack X. It's got its flaws, what with being buggy as heck and only running on fat PS2s. But I love me some Jack X. But Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, yeah, that's like the next best thing, and it's very different, and it's just so good. And I don't think there was nearly enough discussion or praise towards that game. I think we're focusing too much on the storylines in our games, and that kind of bothers me a little, because it feels like the Gamely games are being swept under the rug, that we want games to be movies so badly that they're actually starting to turn into movies, and I kind of like my games to be games. It's a little awkward, to say the least. But, and this actually brings me, one day I was surfing the internet, and I found out that Something Awful still existed, and that they had an article called What If Movies Were Reviewed Like Games? And I got the joke, and it was relatively funny, but there were parts of it I actually found disconcerting. Like, when they were talking about the camera, and they were joking, oh, the camera, I could see things with the camera, and it didn't fall over at all. And I was like, okay, yeah, that would be absurd in a movie, because that's all pre-scripted, pre-recorded, edited, there's multiple takes. But in a game, it's completely different. It's spontaneous, it's user-controlled. And the user or the camera can get into a disagreement. That is actually a thing to discuss in a game review. And I kind of wonder what the message they were trying to say there was. I mean, I agree, a lot of game reviewers suck at their job. It's the whole reason I do this whole GameMetabble thing. I don't think I'm the greatest reviewer ever, or anything like that. I just think a lot of these people really suck, and I wanted to put my money where my mouth was. It proved that I could do it just as well, if not better. And when I'm not lazy, I think that turns out pretty okay. But there's where was I going with this? I think I worry that the message got muddled, that they would like it if games were reviewed the same as movies. And you can't review a game like a movie, like, at all. They're two completely different things, and if you were to, I think it would be very harmful. Because, I mean, then you'd be ignoring the gameplay, the mechanics. The game of the game wouldn't be discussed. If we were to say, oh, we just expect that the camera works, at the same time, we'd be saying that we just expect the game to work a certain way. And horrifyingly enough, I felt that a lot of modern, more story-driven games have played incredibly similarly. And yeah, those games actually could be reviewed like a movie, where you just say, oh, the game is a game. You interact with it, it goes, and just discuss the plot entirely. And that legitimately bothers me in a way. And now, I hear the counter-argument, which is, you can't just say, oh, well, the game works, so it's a 10 out of 10. Apparently, that's what started all these relatively disturbing parody reviews. I saw another one that disturbed me just as much. I guess Jim Sterling did a review of one of the yearly big first-person shooters that basically said it works, so it's a 10 out of 10. Alright, yeah, that's bullshit. But you should discuss, in unbiased terms, if a game functions or not. And that is half the battle. Like, if a game worked and is playable and could conceivably be enjoyed, that's a 3 out of 5 to me. It's at least a decent game. It functions. The rest of the journey is, what's the hook? What's the twist? What makes this special? What makes this unique? Is it the graphics? Is it the art, the music? Are the characters particularly endearing? Does it have an interesting mechanic? Does it revisit a genre we haven't seen in ages? What does it do new in that genre? What is the rest of... What is the rest of the review? That's the rest of the battle. That's what brings it up to a 4 and a 5 out of 5. And I actually am a strong supporter of actual review scores. We'll discuss that later. But, yeah, so I think it goes hand in hand. Because I think a game could be... And you couldn't do it like half reviewing the gameplay, half reviewing the story, because you can have a phenomenal game without any plot, one that leans more towards the football area. And I think we need to get back on track and focus more on understanding how best to review and analyze the football side of the game as much as the movie side of the game. I think we're focusing way too much on that, and I think it could hurt us in the long run. I don't know, though. That's just my opinion. In case you can't tell, I'm not a big story video game guy. Actually, I'll save it for another time. I just really hope that people don't get too carried away with that. And I wish people would remember that games are games, too. That there's a competitive or cooperative, or that there's more to it than just how does it tell a story. Because much as I like a good story, I like a good game a whole lot more. Anyway, this is Gel, and I hope you've enjoyed this GameMetabble. See you next time, folks.